Okay, very good. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. This is Integral Communications Group First Inner Circle. I hope that you are doing well and that you're safe, that you found yourself, in good company as well. 2 years ago or so, I founded Integral Communications Group because I'd spent some time at IBM and some time at Bloomberg and had many conversations with peers and friends in big organizations, small organizations around the world, really, about the changing nature of work and how the relationship between the workforce and employers is changing so much that it really was time for communications teams and human resources teams, marketing teams, technology teams to get together and think about employee experience in new ways, not just communications or the delivery of benefits or the delivery of marketing assets or the delivery of capabilities and so on. Because when we come together, into a more integrated experience, that's what drives not only business outcomes, but it drives a sense of meaning and purpose, and it creates the environment in which people can thrive as professionals and do great work. And along the way, I've had the privilege to work with many great people, and so bring them together into an organization. Integral Communications Group really was an exciting opportunity for me a couple of years ago, and it's really exciting to be able to bring some of those people to you. And today I want to introduce John Buchholz, who is a longtime friend and colleague of mine. He and I worked together for many years at IBM. John has led internal communications and has held other executive positions in communications and marketing at IBM, at Pitney Bowes, at Covetrus, and now he's consulting with us at Integral. Welcome, John.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Ethan. Great to be here today, and I hope you're doing well too.
Thank you. Thankfully, safe here in Brooklyn, though. Just as we started our recording, several fire trucks rolled up, so we heard some sirens outside. I think everything's okay. It seems like a false alarm, but these days, like anytime there's a siren, obviously it's you kind of go running to the window. So I hope they're doing okay, our first responders. So obviously we come together today during very, very unusual circumstances, with a tremendous pandemic that's not just impacting the health of individuals and has been a real tragedy for many. It's also having an enormous economic impact, which is driving huge economic decisions for big organizations, small organizations, medium-sized organizations. And what we're wanting to talk with you about today, John, is what do we do? How do we convey some of these hard choices in a way that helps convey what's going on, but is also compassionate. Right. And so,
this crisis is unusual, and because it really speaks to two things that people care the most about, which is how are my family and friends doing physically and emotionally, from their health perspective, and what's going on with me from a business perspective. Will I continue to have my job, or what are the prospects just even 3 to 6 months from now? So the two of those really bring, together this notion that communications is as important as it ever has been, and good communications, thoughtful communications, how do we engage employees in the right way, has never been more important.
Absolutely. And, so I've prepared some questions, as you well know, but I just want the participants who've joined us today to also know that we're looking for your questions as well, comments. And for those of you who haven't been on a webinar like this before, there's a little Q&A area. You can just type in your questions, and we'll be able to convey them to John as well. So you've been in organizations that have been through drastic changes before. Sure. Would you say there are some basics or some like foundational, principles that we think about, as we go into a hard choice?
Yeah, sure. A lot of us have been in organizations where kind of the old command and control style was how it was, the classic 5-paragraph email from an executive to an audience was how you prepared things. But, that kind of style is long gone. And particularly now when employees want more, they want to engage, they want to contribute, so if they have anything that they can do to help the company succeed, they want to have a voice in that. And so, we have to have channels in place and mechanisms so that employees feel like they're contributing, that their voice is being heard, or that they have even a place for tough questions to be asked and answered. And so, that means leaders need to be prepared for, okay, how do I also show some empathy, that I'm concerned about them as, just humans, not just employees, but what's going on with their families or their friends. Maybe they're, disconnected from family and they're just concerned overall. Or have we been able to reach out to employees in some ways that maybe the larger group doesn't know, so that how can I personalize that story and make it be real to employees so that they see that me as a leader, I'm also human, and I'm concerned about how their the organization is doing and how they're doing with their families. So I think some of the basics are, we have to move away from that old mass email structure, or just thinking that one and done is the way, because we have to really hit them with communications for where they are, what they want to help, how they want to be engaged, and in a method that allows them to really feel like they're part of the process.
That raises a question of, I mean, even just like the channels and like the formats.
Sure.
So, it seems like, obviously everybody changing their place has some, not obviously, it's got to have some implications for your channel strategy, how
Absolutely.
you reach people. How are you thinking about that, John?
I was thinking that our people already, it's only been, arguably a month, or in some cases not even a month, but how many Zoom meetings, have people have been on, and they're just, even getting tired of that, from being a really novel approach to, wow, I can't take another one of these, stacked on top of another. Yet people want a single source of truth. And so that's why intranets might still have a great valid place, because you can have a consistent message there, but that's not the only place. And especially since, as we were just talking, an intranet doesn't necessarily have the best collaboration built in, although some do and some don't. So that's where things like Teams come in, or even going back to Yammer or any other kind of threaded discussion that's monitored by, a trusted source. So maybe you've got an HR team or a crisis communications team that has its own channel that is set up, that you can have a dialogue with employees about their questions and get them answered, or at least a promise that once a week you're going to have everybody's questions that you can have answered in a certain period of time posted, so that people come to regularly see that the company cares about themselves, cares about communicating how the health of the organization is doing. And then, even are there some stories of how the company's outreaching to vendors, partners, employees from around the globe, and what are they doing to help make sure that they're doing fine.
So I like how there's a blend there of, all right, we're going to, actually have the authority of the company, like some, a place where I know I'm getting the, the real truth from, from an institution, but then also the ability to kind of query that and see how that might change over time. I think for a lot of us, our last experience with anything that we'd even remotely consider in the same ballpark would be, the 2008 financial crisis.
Sure.
And you were a communications executive at that point. Are there any learnings that I know it's kind of apples and oranges, but there were workforce reductions. There was a lot of economic peril, a lot of questions about, am
Absolutely.
I safe? Yeah. So what learnings might you draw from that experience?
In fact, I was leading communications for IBM's global financing, which is essentially the bank of IBM, right here during a financial crisis. And so, we tried to look at, okay, first of all, are we helping our customers wade through this? Do we need to adjust any of our, policies or procedures so that it makes it, better for them to operate? So we were very concerned about the health of our clients. And then we thought, okay, well, what are things that we can do? And so we tried to poll employees and, executives, meeting with employee groups, whether it was large groups or even small roundtable sessions. And, ultimately we came up with, look, we still have the goods, we have the financing, and we need to help our customers rally so that when the economy does improve, that they're well positioned. So we came up with this idea to have, $1 billion in small business loans available for very low cost. Now, a lot of companies, don't have $1 billion to offer to, but we did. And so, we got, not only do we have great media attention with, reporters, or analysts saying only a company like IBM could pull this off, but our employees saw it as, okay, wow, we are trying to maintain the health of our financing group. And then therefore that, they saw that, okay, this is worth hanging in for, because a lot of of our competitors were losing their employees to companies outside of financing. But we did a great job of keeping especially the best and brightest we wanted to stay to, hang in there with us.
I think that's really important to give a multi-stakeholder view. And I mean, in what you just described, it doesn't take $1 billion to do that. And I do see some organizations saying,
Right.
okay, well, here's what we're doing. It could be something big like financing small businesses. It could be something small like, donating to essential workers, relief funds for essential workers and so on.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, translate that to today. I'm sure a lot of companies have gone out of their way to either reconstitute their operations to be more supportive of partners out there in healthcare or even non-healthcare, just so that they can help consumers with protective equipment. Or you're making resources available, you're donating employees to charitable groups that need strong leadership right now, a whole variety of things. So one group of senior people may know about these, but the larger group doesn't. So employees want to know that they're working for, a great company, because as a reminder, Ethan, these are the times that employees will remember, oh my gosh, during this crisis, my company was doing X, Y, and Z, or they really communicated with me in comforting ways throughout the organization that made me feel like I was very much, top of mind in their outreach to me.
Yeah, and I think there's almost an emotional level of just being treated, as an adult and as part of the organization, and being included, and that's very powerful. People will remember how they felt about the communications as much as the content of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reading something the other day about employees are adults and they want to be treated like adults. I mean, as silly as that sounds, but sometimes we get up senior in the organization and people can handle the facts. So if you get a question from an employee that says to a senior leader, are there going to be layoffs? Will there be furloughs? Any other kind of cutbacks? That's the time to say, look, if no decision has been made, but you're thinking about these types of things, to say, well, look, no decision has been made, but we are looking at a variety of options that will help us sustain the company, prevent the fewest number of job cuts if we have to go there. We prefer to look at policies and procedures, and can we extend our payment terms, or can we even take advantage of some of the economic stimulus first before we have to get there, so that at least you're being honest and upfront and saying, look, we haven't made any decisions, but all of these things are on our mind as we try to go forward.
I was just about to turn to some of the, we've got some questions in the Q&A
Great.
pool here, and two of them relate directly. So thank you to Anthony and to Tom for submitting questions about job security and if that even exists anymore. So the question from Tom is, what advice do you have for employers to communicate to its employees regarding job security? What might, when that might be less of a thing than ever, combining the reality with empathy can be challenging on this topic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some industries are, taking it a little bit harder at the moment, especially if you're B2C, then, a lot of consumer demand, especially if you're in the entertainment industry or other direct products may be harder to recover quickly as perhaps B2B, who might still have customers who are trying to operate their own businesses. And so whatever products or services you have, may still continue on, but even if it's at a greater, reduction. So the point being, how do you tell, kind of be that honest and yet empathetic voice at the same time? So I think by discussing the fact that, we're part of the larger economic scene, and, so that we're not immune, just like any other company is not immune. There are, you open up the paper any day and there's plenty of examples. And that, the company is trying to take advantage of any economic stimulus programs that have been available. That, what are the other things that you're doing? Are you working with vendors? Are you working with suppliers to make sure that the supply chain continues? So I think it's a larger answer, not just of talking about pure jobs, but what is in totality the company has afoot to keep momentum going. And then, if you get direct question about will there be job cuts, and especially if you're not ready to announce anything, that would be disastrous if you tried to say, yeah, we're going to have something in 2 weeks, and then business changes and you've gotten the organization twisted up in a knot. So I think it's important to say that no decision has been made, but we're trying to do all these other things to really minimize any disruption to employees.
Yeah, and I think that's we say a lot in the integral team that clarity is kind, and the best that we can do in some of these moments is just to be clear, and even if the clarity is that we don't really know what's going on yet. We've got two questions here. Two questions around what how we keep employees engaged who remain after a furlough or after a layoff. So thank you for that question, Anthony. It's how can internal communications convey to employees a sense of reassurance and positivity in the face of such uncertainty, and how do you keep employees who've not been laid off or furloughed engaged and working towards the mission?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a number of rules for furlough mean that they can't even check work email accounts. So it depends on probably, I don't know if there's local statutes or whatever the local labor laws are, but I can say that I would say that, they certainly can keep in touch through social media and, external social media. And, more and more every day, there's plenty of examples where a company's external social media account is being read by employees. I mean, that's well documented. So I think that, kind of using that as one channel to talk to employees is greatly important, so that they see that you're doing what you're doing in the community, what you're doing to try to continue to grow business. If you've been awarded some loan or, government assistance that might help in the long run. So I think whether it's, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, any number of social media accounts are going to be more important than ever.
One of the things that is happening as a result of, or it's being accelerated as a result of this crisis, is that the ability to reach senior executives directly seems to have just been boosted. So suddenly senior executives who may have had a whole lifetime of having layers and layers between them and the workforce, that suddenly is compressed. And so we've got a question from Jason Antoine about how do you counsel senior leaders and managers to be using things like hosting Zoom chats and being on Slack and so on. Like what kind of advice do you give, particularly when some of those questions may be hard in those environments?
Yeah, we always expect the worst, and we have to always prepare for that. But I've seen plenty of great examples where a senior leader will post, hey, I just spoke to 3 clients and here's what's on their mind these days. And, even posing the question, what's your reaction to these? And it really sparks a dialogue. And so the executive seems to get great reward out of just sharing what he knows or she knows and how that's, impacting their business. And then employees want to have a dialogue about it. And then you get comments and then people commenting on the comments. And so I think you really got to just kind of dip your toe in the water, maybe even with some safer topics like the one I just talked about. And then they get more kind of balance and, comfort level, and they're ready to take on, greater topics. So it's not just, putting themselves out there for the first time in front of thousands, but it can be used in small group settings and then, build as you go.
That's great advice. So in terms of reaching folks who are, out and, maybe they're a disparate workforce or sales workforce. I know you have a lot of experience with communicating with, sales forces
Mm-hmm.
that are, kind of itinerant or on the road a lot. I suspect you have some counsel for reaching people who are remote. What would you advise us right now about reaching, whether it's a sales force or just a remote workforce in general? And that's a question from Eve Eaton. Thank you for that, Eve.
Sure. The manager, regardless of whether you're, typical office setting or a remote setting, because a lot of salespeople are permanently out in the field. So it's sales manager or just regular manager is this, again, I keep saying communications has never been more important. Likewise, the manager has never been more important. And so to get that kind of clear direction from even a sales leader for what are the expectations of the sales team in this environment, are we going to continue to reward people at the same sales plan that was established in January before this was really a topic on many people's mind? That'd be hard to understand. So then what changes to the sales plan? What's the new compensation model look like? Because you can't protect the rest of the company if you don't have a strong sales team who's continuing to make the cash register ring.
Yeah.
So I think it's really strong leadership, decision-making from senior leaders, and then finding a way to communicate that, again, in a dialogue setting with your sales teams.
And that's so important because those, and there may be an entirely different strategy. It might be just about customer retention and deepening, existing relationships as opposed to rewarding net new, logos that you're putting on the website.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and as you said, customer retention, my God, what a time for that. So what can be communicated to the rest of the company about what's the health of the top 50 clients like right now? And can the rest of the company be going overboard to make sure that the delivery of products and services is, a top of mind so that the sales team continue to get support by the rest of the company for maintaining those clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a question that's come in about going back to work, which is fitting because we're coming towards the end of our conversation here. The question is, we're looking at our go back to work in offices plan, and one item on the table is surveying employees anonymously to get a sense about how they're feeling about this, their expectations and concerns. Any advice or guidelines on executing a survey like this? And this is more to give us a temperature check.
I think a survey is a fantastic idea. And to be honest with you, the notion of communicating appropriately now and with empathy, and then, as people start to come back to work, whatever that looks like, in the new normal, to continue to do surveys so that you're constantly measuring, whether it's through not just clicks or open rates, but how are they engaging? Can you get any of the feedback from executives who you've been asking to really ramp up their engagement? Are they getting more question, more dialogue? Or the managers seeing that employees are really digging deep to support the company. And then, frankly, just the great, the ongoing pulse survey, so that you get sort of consistent statistics that you can ask at the beginning of this to the middle, 6 months from now, and then kind of chart. Our employees continue to see that, the communications have been authentic, they've been genuine, they've been complete and regular and honest, all those kind of attributes.
We just have a moment left, but you raised the point of authenticity a couple times, and it's one thing to say, like, go be authentic. It's another thing to actually be able to do it. I'd love to, is there a parting thought on just, is there words or language or methods that you would, promote right now that you would advise us to use to really be authentic and in this moment?
Of course. First of all, start off like you did. Is everybody doing okay? You're kind of working in your own environment there in Brooklyn. And so to let the leaders see that, so that, how can they portray, look, I'm home, I'm with my family, I've got the dog, and my mother-in-law is upstairs. We're all making sure we're doing the right things. So it's that kind of language, also body language, the presence, the being genuine on the phone or in Zoom meetings, so that you start off by, trying to be human yourself, because you're asking your employees to do the same. So I think that's just a nice way to be personable with your audience.
Thank you for that. And, we just have a minute or so left, and we got several questions, but one just came in from, it looks like Cherry Harris Bayer from LabCorp. She's working with a large portion of the workforce on the front lines, and she'd like to know any ideas about how to engage and reward them during this challenging time.
Sure. I mean, I think everybody loves a good story. That's why we're communicators. We like to talk about, the successes. So can you spotlight an employee out there who's going above and beyond, or who's had some great trials and how they've overcome them? Maybe they have a great manager who's been supportive and, given them the time to also take care of matters at home while also supporting those on the front lines. So I think it's always comes down to, can you really put a great face to some of these stories and, continue to populate your communications channels with those.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And you've hit the nail on the head where, sometimes it's about sending somebody something and a compensation or whatever. But in this moment, we want to know we're okay. We want to keep our jobs, of course. Right. We also want to feel like we're contributing to something bigger than ourselves. And I think, probably the folks at LabCorp really are on the front line.
My hat's off to them who are
likewise
out there.
John, I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. This is really great. We got a lot of questions that we didn't get to, but we will try to answer them to you either after the session or on our blog. At the conclusion, in just a few seconds, you'll all see a little pop-up. If you could take just a minute to answer a couple of questions, we'd love to know how this went. This is our first Inner Circle webinar, and we'd like to know if there are topics that you'd like to hear from us about and where we might be able to help you. I hope everybody can stay safe, and don't forget to cheer on all of the essential workers out there and keep doing the good work to recognize and support them as well in your day. So thank you again, and have a great day.
Thanks, Ethan.